Hey guys, this is Jake from Biota. This is week 6 of 52 weeks of breeding. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of a setup for broodstock and initial larval rearing setups. So the past few weeks we've been discussing how to condition your broodstock, how to larval rear a little bit. This is how to put everything kind of together in one so you can kind of get your hands wet and started with our journey. So for a broodstock setup, some of the basic things you're going to need is a small tank adequate for the species that you're rearing. This is a pretty good size for many gobies, clownfish, even some cardinals. You'll need a heater, some filtration, and lighting. That's kind of the most of the setup for this first initial bit. So obviously after you have the tank, one of the easiest things to do is get some lighting. I went with a pretty cheap option. You don't really need different spectrums for your fish. A little hang-on clip light, put it over the aquarium. You can put a timer onto it, make it a little bit easier for you. And you can adjust the timing when you want your fish to spawn, or if they're seasonal spawners, you can adjust and change as you see fit. But you don't need any kind of specialized lighting for this. Just an on-off switch should be nice and fine for that. For filtration, I like to keep it pretty simple too. You can use something like a Seachem Tidal. This is a Seachem Shark ADV. They're pretty simple, almost like a mini canister filter in your aquarium. It keeps the water clean, keeps a little bit of flow in the tank, and makes sure the animals stay pretty healthy. And you can load these with live active bacteria to make sure that there's no ammonia spikes when you're just getting started up. Another important piece of utility is the heater. You want to keep the temperatures just like you would a regular reef tank. You can spike it a little bit over a couple of days if you want to try to induce some spawning and some seasonal spawners, or just keep it stable for consistent spawning. And finally, you'll need some spawning substrate. So I like to use PVC. It's really easy to disinfect and clean, and a lot of fish will spawn right on the inside. Over here, I got a couple different small PVC tubes. This is ideal for something like a goby. And a trick that I've used in the past is lining the inside of the tubes with a piece of plastic clear paper.
Inside of the tubes with a piece of plastic clear.
This allows the fish to spawn right on this, and so you can take it out and put it into your larval rearing tank. Yeah, so you can play around with a few different sizes of PVC, or even some people use ceramic tiles, or whatever works easiest for your fish. You just want to be able to take it out or sanitize as needed without impacting too much of their spawning behavior. So a good thing with these PVCs, they're not really absorbent, so you can sanitize them by just using a simple bleach and thio mixture. A couple minutes into a dosage of bleach, rinse off, put into thiosulfate to neutralize that bleach, and they're ready to use. But if you have a couple on hand, you can swap them out, let them dry out, really get sanitized before using them again. All right, so this is basically a full setup for maybe a small goby or a pair of clowns or damsels. What are you gonna do next? So an easy way to do this is a pretty similar setup for the larval tanks. What I like to do to make sure the fish don't stop spawning is using small fishing line. You can pull out the filament on the inside so you're not disrupting the home too much, and you can just put a replacement right in there right afterwards. Or you can clean these periodically to make sure they're not covered in algae. But a lot of times the parents will keep them clean themselves. All right, so when you have the eggs on this, you're gonna wanna make sure that the surface is as clean as possible. Sanitizing overnight is good, but what I also like to do is take a really soft toothbrush and scrub around the eggs. To make sure there's no excess algae or detritus that can foul the water you're going to be putting the eggs into. You also want to match the parameters as close as possible to the parent's tank to make sure there's no jump in temperature, salinities, or anything like that to shock the eggs or otherwise make them stressed out. So once the surface is clean, an easy way to do this is to rubber band it to a strong tile so it's a nice flat surface. And when you do that, you can lean it up next to an air stone. And when you lean it up next to an air stone, the bubbles can wash over the eggs to keep them jostled. A lot of times the parents will do this for the first few days, but you want to take the eggs out for the second half, or just right before they start hatching, so that they don't go down the filtration or they don't get eaten by the parents. So when you're setting this up, you don't want to use something like a wood air stone. You want to have a little bit bigger bubbles to make sure they're jostling the eggs just right and not kind of getting trapped between them. But once this is all set up with the right parameters, everything's all set, you want to darken the tank. A nice, cheap, easy way to do this is with a garbage bag. So what I like to do is cut the garbage bag to length on each of the sides, or you can just cut a hole in the top to make sure they get proper aeration. Yeah, so they're not going to hatch during the daytime. The eggs only hatch at night. So you want to make sure that the tank is as dark as possible for the highest hatch rate. But you still want open air for them to be able to get oxygen. You don't want to crowd the water too much. But once they hatch, you're going to check probably within the next 12 to 14 hours to make sure. And the next morning you can see little larvae within the tank. A lot of times you have a little flashlight, check on them. And at this time, depending on the species, you can start dosing some live feeds like phytoplanktons, rotifers, copepods, depending on what their first prey items are. So the next morning when everything's done hatching, you're going to want to take out the spawning material and just leave the tank primarily with an air stone. You're going to be doing pretty consistent water changes, so that's going to be your nutrient management. One really good way to do this is to take airline tubing and siphon out any uneaten food, any waste, multiple times a day. That makes sure the water parameters are pretty consistent. The fish are going to stay healthy and not get any ammonia issues. Some people prefer to use something like an Amquel or like a Prime to try to detoxify the ammonia. I think it's better maybe do both. So you're doing the water changes along with the ammonia detoxifier. And then after they hatch, you want to put the light back on the aquarium and make sure that they're getting enough light that they can see their food prey. You can play around with different timings, but a lot of times you want to have most of the day being able for the fish to feed. Yeah, so I wanted to show you guys, you can kind of do this with parts you have laying around your house. I mean, all hobbyists are a little bit of hoarders, so we have a spare heater, a spare pump, a spare little tank you can have and just set up right away. So it doesn't have to be something super complicated or overly expensive to start breeding fish that might interest you. If you didn't have a lot of this stuff sitting around your house already, it kind of comes up to about $50 for a full setup, even if brand new, with most of that going to the filtration needed for both broodstock and larval tank. Yeah, so it's really good to showcase that it doesn't have to be overwhelming or complicated. Anyone can get started whenever they want, and that's really the more important part about breeding fish, that anyone can do it, and the only hardest step is getting started. Once again, guys, this is Jake from Biota. This is week 6 of 52 weeks of breeding. We did a setup about how to set up a broodstock aquarium and a larval rearing kit for on the cheap and pretty easy. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to stock them with some live feeds and copepods. So we'll see you next time. Have a great day. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below.